followed a scene on Sunday in Cromwell, Connecticut, as Keegan Bradley, the New Englander, sank a birdie at the last hole to claim victory in the Travelers Championship for the second time. It was Keegan's first career win in a signature event. And that's it. Signature events are done. You see the lineup? Quite a list, by the way. Hideki, Rory, Ludwig, Russell, JT, Sepp, Scotty, and Keegan Bradley. Great to be joined now by our own Todd Lewis. Always great to pick your brain. I tell you, it could be a complicated time for Keegan Bradley, but he sure is making things simple. What have you learned about Keegan Bradley in this latest incarnation and latest victory?
Well, I'll be honest. We were a little, I think all of us were apprehensive when Keegan Bradley was surprisingly named the United States Ryder Cup captain. I was concerned how we'd be able to handle the off-the-course distractions while still trying to play a full PGA Tour schedule. As an elite player, by the way, he's not somebody who's in the fall of his career. And I've been impressed by the way he's been able to handle it, saying yesterday after his victory with Rich Lerner and Brandon Chambly, and the fact that, yes, he's so busy off the golf course that he actually finds peace and tranquility inside the ropes on the golf course. And it's interesting now that peace that he has found on the golf course is causing him more stress now off the golf course because everybody wants him on the team. But he's handled himself beautifully, and I think he has gained. Not that they didn't have respect for him prior to that announcement, I think all the United States players have tremendous respect now for Keegan Bradley.
Todd, with as tied in as you are, you just used the phrase that everybody wants him on the team. Are you concerned at all about those distractions perhaps overcoming him if he were to put himself on the team or if he were to qualify accordingly? Where do you stand on all of that?
Well, I heard you guys talking about this on Golf Today earlier, and yes, there are some things that you have to consider. Number one, Keegan Bradley hasn't been in a Ryder Cup team room since 2014. Now, he was in the President's Cup in Montreal, of course, which, of course, was just last year. But Ryder Cup is a different animal. So he's going to have to reacclimate himself with the pressure, the intensity of the Ryder Cup. And doing that as captain is intense enough. But it will be challenging if he indeed is on that team as a playing captain. There's no doubt about it, because, yes, you talked about the fact that he'll have to do all the media requirements as a captain. He will have to set the lineups. So there's a lot to do besides, and by the way, working on how to hit an 8-iron 165 yards. So he's got a lot on his plate if indeed that is the path that he decides to go down. However, he has capable assistants, and I'm going to lean heavily on Jim Furyk. Jim Furyk obviously is very involved with the United States Ryder Cup team and the United States team in general. He's been there. He knows what it takes to be a captain. And Keegan Bradley looks up to him tremendously. He is going to be kind of the father figure type for Keegan Bradley in this environment. So if Keegan does decide to put himself on the team, and I think he will lean on the 6 that qualify as to whether or not he should be on that team, Jim Furyk's going to play a huge role.
You make some great points, T. Lou, but the other side of the coin might say there's a Paul McGinley who'd love to see Keegan be a playing captain. There are probably 12 Europeans who would love to see Keegan be a playing captain just because of the unknowns, the potential complications. The Europeans seem to have this streamlined system. Is there a potential perhaps for conflict, fear of the unknown, that we don't know how crazy it could be, and that maybe we should listen to Paul McGinley when he says, hey, yeah, we'd love to see Keegan have that role?
Well, we all love Paul McGinley. He's a great friend of mine, too. He has rooting interest for Team Europe, and you completely understand that. But you'd be hard-pressed to make me change my mind that Keegan Bradley isn't one of the top 12 players in the United States. He probably deserves to be on that team. And we're going to find out a little more about that this week because he's currently in the field to play the Rocket Classic. But could it be a distraction? Again, I think Jim Furyk is going to play a key role. I think he's going to play a huge role. He could probably be the pseudo-captain. I would say, yeah, obviously Keegan is captain 1 and Jim Furyk is 1A. That's how close that will be. But yeah, I mean, look, the United States team, they're a very top-heavy, positive team led by Scotty Scheffler. But depth-wise, there are some concerns compared to Team Europe, especially if you consider experience. But at the same time, it balances out in the fact that you're going to have the New York USA crowd. I will say this: I can't wait to get there. I mean, it's going to be one of the greatest sporting events of 2025. Not golf events, sporting events. So it's something that I can't wait to get to, and I'm sure the players can as well.
Todd, I wanted to ask you one more question about Keegan and what you've observed. You mentioned the fact that it's been, 11 years since he was on a United States Ryder Cup team, but this is a 39-year-old Keegan Bradley, and the way that he handled his emotions, the way that he compartmentalized when the chants were coming in of Team USA, really from the first hole yesterday right through 18, he didn't allow that full purging, the catharsis of emotion until that birdie putt sunk at 18. Any thoughts on who Keegan Bradley is, 2025 edition?
Well, I go back to what I was said initially when we brought up Keegan Bradley. Because this was such a surprise, I wasn't sure how he would handle it. Keegan Bradley is a world-class player, a very smart person, a very loyal person to his friends, his family. I mean, just a quality player, an even better person. But he has handled it so well. I mean, so well. I mean, there's so many things that you have to be as a captain. He was the very first of the captains to organize a team dinner at the Truist Championship, and he invited Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau. I mean, he just completely eliminated the borders between the PGA Tour and LIV Golf and said, no, if you're a possibility to be on my team, I want you all here, and we're gonna talk about fighting for each other. We're gonna talk about what we want in a team room with camaraderie. Look, I think he's handled himself beautifully, especially somebody who's never been, like I said, in a team room for as a vice captain, at least. So I think he's going to be a positive intangible for the United States, not to mention what he does on the golf course. So, yeah, I think he should be on the team. I really do. I think he's a great player and a great asset.
T. Tommy Fleetwood has accomplished so much in this game. 7 DP World Tour wins, Ryder Cup glory. He now has 42 top 10 finishes. I can't believe I'm saying that. 6 runner-up finishes on the PGA Tour. Where does he go from here?
I think he's going to use this as a positive. It's obviously very devastating for him. If you watch him play that 18th hole yesterday, right in the middle of the fairway, first off, when he hit the shot, I was noticing the flag, and the flag was into both him and Keegan Bradley. He decided to go with a wedge. Maybe didn't adjust properly to that wind. Maybe thought adrenaline would take over. But then he seemed like he was just a tad quick with his birdie attempt, and then obviously this par attempt that didn't fall. Look, I will say this about Tommy Fleetwood. Tommy Fleetwood is a class player. And, I mean, if you go back to the beginning of the year when certain players were saying to the media, we don't owe you anything, okay, that's fine. But Tommy Fleetwood, after that gut-wrenching loss where he led a large majority of the holes in that tournament, went right to the media, was candid, was honest, probably was therapeutic for him, and opened up to the media, which was a vessel to the fans, showed his heart, showed his head. And I think he will be a better player from this.
Yeah.
I think he's going to win on the PGA Tour, probably multiple times. And this could be a springboard for him to do so, and understanding what it takes down the stretch, mentally, emotionally, mechanically, strategically, to cross the threshold and win on the PGA Tour. But he's too good a player, too experienced a player to fade and use this as something that's going to be a negative to him.